cannabinoid medicine and how this might look in a post-prohibition world, which is a tricky subject because there's a lot of ways to get weed in people's systems, and it might be great to give it to an epileptic kid, but it's not great for teenagers doing 5 grams of dabs a day. And how do you figure that out? So we're going to be talking about the future of cannabinoid medicine.
I'm a medical student in upstate New York, and I'm currently completing a project called the Distinction in Advocacy, by way of which I've been learning how to not only advocate for my future patients individually, but also on a legislative level. Over the past year and a half, I've had the opportunity to advocate for the federal reclassification of cannabis in order to allow increased research in the United States, as well as for increased access to whole plant cannabis for patients in need. I've learned that I have a voice, and I've witnessed the power of teamwork, strong leadership, member empowerment, and a dedicated, organized effort to achieve a clear goal. And I want to show all of you that you have a voice too. Cannabis is currently classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, with the definition that it has a lack of safety under medical supervision, a lack of medical efficacy, and a high potential for abuse. However, no part of this definition is objectively true. And the classification severely limits our ability to study cannabis, which is really unfortunate because in 2009, the United States produced about 40% more biomedical research studies than any other nation. And research from across the world is coming out monthly and even weekly with increasing and reaffirming evidence that cannabinoid therapies are not only useful in managing certain often debilitating symptoms, diseases, and disorders, but even potentially in preventing and treating them. When it comes to medicine, providers who are prescribing medications like physicians, physician's assistants, and nurse practitioners, they should take an evidence-based approach whenever possible. If we don't have large-scale, high-quality human clinical trials in order to guide our medical decision-making, then we won't have scientifically accurate information. We won't have cause-effect relationships, which are essential for differentiating true efficacy from perceived efficacy. However, scientists aren't being allowed to gather the maximum extent of this information. And while more research is certainly warranted, waiting for more in order to reschedule, given the hundreds of studies that we already have, is not only unreasonable, but potentially even unethical. When it comes to the safety of cannabinoids, information is increasing and showing that potential harms of whole plant use have been significantly exaggerated over the past century. And the safety profile of whole plant cannabis makes responsible experimentation by informed patients under medical supervision and guidance very, very, very low risk. And the same is true for Schedule I psychedelic drugs like psilocybin and LSD. When prescribing drugs off-label, that is for uses for which they have not been approved by the FDA, including drugs with risk of severely negative side effects, including death, we trust providers to use discretion and appropriate risk-benefit analysis in guiding treatment and making decisions. And the 2006 study found that 73% of off-label drug mentions had little or no scientific support anyway. So why can't we trust them in recommending something as safe as cannabis? The argument that we don't have enough research in order to reschedule or even experiment with whole plant use clinically is unfounded, but there's still a lot to learn. While patient self-reports of benefit from use cannot necessarily be relied on as scientifically valid, given that humans are fallible and biased, they should be strongly considered in the health assessment of a patient always. Objective measures are often not useful in gauging real-world patient progress in terms of symptoms like pain. Subjective measures like quality of life indices often guide treatment. So what would the future of cannabinoid medicine look like? Cannabis with psychoactive effects would be rescheduled from Schedule I to at least Schedule II, but more appropriately Schedule III, so that both governmental and non-governmental organizations could increase research on various forms, concentrations, ratios, and delivery methods of cannabinoid therapies without the risk of federal interference. Providers would see whole plant cannabis as another reasonable option for patients with who are experiencing a suboptimal response from their standard treatment or who are experiencing subjectively negative side effects from their standard treatment. In some cases, cannabinoid therapies may even become first-line treatments given their safety. Providers will also be aware of the situations in which whole plant cannabis use is not recommended because sometimes it's not a good idea for patients. And they would be able to guide patients in how to use cannabis in order that patients could avoid experiencing any unpleasant mental or physical effects. The pharmacies and medical dispensaries would formulate and distribute cannabinoid-based medicine so that the multi-cannabinoid synergistic process could be appropriately taken advantage of via plant breeding and compounding. In some cases, certain formulations may even become FDA approved, which is an important thing to consider because FDA approval is important to many people, not just in the medical field, but even patients who may be a little bit more conservative. While synthetic cannabinoids may have their place in certain treatments, especially targeted treatments, the current research does not support the idea that they're as effective as or as well tolerated as endogenous modulation, which is changing the chemicals that we already have in our own body that work in our endocannabinoid systems, but also phytocannabinoid use. And the high cost of their production can be prohibitive and unnecessary in many cases, again, given the multi-cannabinoid synergistic effects. And safe access would be a key feature of the phytopharmacy. Because prohibition doesn't prevent access, it limits safety. Patients, many people who are patients or who are caring for their loved ones will do whatever they can to help themselves or their loved ones feel better, including becoming criminals under state or federal law. They may gain access to cannabis of poor quality and ineffective varietal. It may be too activating or too depressing. It may have been grown with dangerous pesticides or contain fungus, which is an especially important consideration for the immunocompromised. Providers would distinguish medical users from recreational users. While the groups may overlap sometimes, they're certainly not synonymous. And providers would understand that relief and not cognitive modification is the goal of patients as opposed to recreational users. And that in many cases, patients will feel a benefit, will feel relief from non-psychoactive strains, or even from light use of strains that are highly psychoactive. But when cognitive modification does result from use and is even enjoyed by a patient because they enjoy subjective psychological benefit or respite from suffering as a result, it will be viewed as a therapeutic rather than adverse event. In the medical setting, feelings of peace, euphoria, and relaxation, elements of the well-known effects of higher doses of medications like morphine are certainly recognized even by providers, but they're not vilified, they're even praised. So why is cognitive modification caused by cannabis use, which is even safer and less sedating in almost all cases of medicinal use, any different? On a different note, recreational drug use of any kind is a public health issue, and it would start to be regarded more often as such. Providers would distinguish use from abuse, and issues of use or dependence would be treated as health and not criminal issues. Providers would also be supportive and non-judgmental in interactions with drug users, so that they could discuss potential ways to prevent associated potential negative outcomes from use. But changes like these can only happen with the help of people like you. After working with teams of activists last year to pass New York's medical cannabis law, the most important thing I learned is that change cannot and will not occur until well-organized, passionate people come together, stand up, and demand to be heard, even in the face of unfavorable odds. And now we have a chance to create change on a federal level. The Compassionate Access, Research Expansion, and Respect States Act, sponsored by both Democrats and Republicans in the U.S. House and Senate, will reclassify cannabis and provide other safeguards for medical cannabis patients across the country, not just state by state. And it will also support the efforts of states in completing their programs without federal interference. While this may not seem like the ideal law to some, change happens in steps, and this would be a really big one. And patients are suffering now, and in many cases, they really can't wait. do anything else, or create state-specific bill petitions if they don't already exist. Use social media outlets like Facebook and Twitter to connect with each other and advocate globally. Join Facebook groups and combine efforts using Twitter hashtags. If you live in a country other than the United States, if anybody is tuning in, and you don't have legal cannabis in your country, then study your country's regulations on cannabis study and use in medicine, and contact the people who are influential in making change. And share your knowledge, but most importantly, share your stories. Because it is most often personal stories that will change legislators' minds. Never forget